Part 50. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 511. However, as soon as the drone flew over the giant crater, it began to shake uncontrollably. The two pairs of balanced rotors rotated and stopped, and wisps of black smoke visible to the naked eye began to emit from inside the machine core. "What's going on? Is there any interference?" Kaylan asked immediately. "I don't know. It doesn't seem like interference. The signal received by the remote control is still full." Before Layton could finish speaking, a series of sparks crackled from the drone, and then it fell headlong towards the bottom of the pit. Was it shot down by something? The Hound nervously picked up the weapon and pointed it in the direction of the giant pit. "No, it wasn't shot down." Layton shook his head. "The last feedback message I received before the drone went out of control was that the motor core was burned. The cause of the burning was overload." "Overload?" The Hound was stunned for a moment. "How many energy crystals did you put into the converter?" "No. This drone is not driven by crystals at all, nor is it equipped with a converter. It uses lithium batteries," Layton said. "Even if it is fully powered, it cannot be overloaded. It must be somewhere." "What's the problem? Could it really be interference from the outside?" Hound asked again. "I checked it just now when Kaylan asked about this. If there is really interference from the outside world, the control system will definitely report an error, but now I only get the message that the motor is overloaded," Layton said a little irritably. He scratched his head and said, "Overload means that the input current is too large in a short period of time, which directly burns the movement. But the problem is that the engine movement I chose is made according to the standards of the crystallized engine, let alone a piece of it. It has a lithium battery. Even the output power of 20 lithium batteries cannot burn it. This current may come from the outside." Kaylan analyzed. "Wireless charging technology, you should be familiar with this term, Layton. This technology has been very mature in the old era, but because of the charging process, the energy loss is too large, so it has not been promoted on a large scale. However, after this technical problem has been solved, there are still quite a lot of devices using wireless charging technology. Last month, the new power vehicle company launched a hovercar with a floating charging base." "You mean there are external devices that are remotely charging the drone?" No. "That's impossible." Layton suddenly shook his head like a rattle. "The main unlimited charging technologies currently in practical application there are two types. One is the electromagnetic induction type, but the charging efficiency of this method is not high. It can only meet the needs of small products such as digital 3C that do not consume much power. As for the technology you mentioned for wireless charging of air cushion vehicles, the thing is that the electromagnetic resonance is far away from, well, this resonance is not the same thing as the resonance caused by the explosion of bugs, but the resonance caused by the explosion evolved from this concept." He continued, "Whether it is inductive or resonant, wireless charging has a transmission distance limit. Just like those bugs, as long as the distance is far enough, even if they explode at the same time, they will not cause resonance, and the drone is overloaded at that time. It was at least more than 100 meters away from the crystal pillars below. How could it be affected by resonance? But the base for charging the hovercar on the Ark is not that big." Aya suddenly stood up and pointed at the crystal pillars in the giant pit and said, "Just take out any one of these pillars and it will be enough to hold up the whole thing. Ark's daily consumption for a year, maybe more. With such a large power and a transmission distance of 100 meters, it should be possible, right?" "That's what I said, but don't forget, we were standing on the edge of this huge pit before, and the nearest crystal pillar to us was less than 100 meters away. If this thing can cause electromagnetic resonance, all the equipment we have now has been wiped out a long time ago," Layton retorted, "unless these crystal pillars can choose their own targets, but since it destroyed my drone, there is no reason to let us go. Intruders who have entered its attack range." Aya couldn't help but fell silent. This was indeed something she had not considered just now. The scope is limited to just above the giant pit. A voice suddenly broke in, and everyone followed the sound, only to see Asano Akira squatting on the ground at some point, with his hands tightly attached to the ground. I can feel, right above the giant pit, there is an unknown force field, my thoughts cannot invade it. A force field, Kaylan subconsciously looked up, but the dome above the giant pit was no different from the surroundings. Is it a defensive force field? Something like an energy shield? No, it's not right either. As soon as Layton said it, he immediately denied his guess. If it was a defensive force field, the drone would have crashed into it long ago. It exploded directly. Wait a minute. I know. This should be a resonant force field. Resonant force field? What the hell? Never heard of it. The Hound glanced at Layton, who was a little excited at the moment. I coined this term myself, but this concept has been proposed before, but it was forgotten because it was impossible to implement. Layton said quickly, spittle flying wildly. Resonant force field, it uses the resonance effect of energy crystals to amplify a large number of crystals to each other, thereby producing greater output power. You see, these neatly arranged crystal pillars are a wonderful amplification array. But, you just said it couldn't be resonant. According to what you said now, were you just giving up on your feelings? Hound frowned and complained. Besides, if it really triggered such a large-scale resonance, we are so close, it's impossible that it won't have any impact at all, right? The Hound looked up and took a look at the energy margin of the power armor. Not only did it not increase, it actually dropped by 2 percentage points from the last time he checked. This is why this concept can only exist in theory and cannot be implemented, Layton said. In order for this large-scale resonant force field to take effect, there must be a way to constrain the energy, otherwise it won't be a force field, but a super big explosion, just like those lava canthafias. But this technology is far more difficult than building a perfect amplification array. Just because humans can't create it, doesn't mean that this third civilization can't create it. Kaylan murmured, it seems that they have mastered the technology you mentioned, and have successfully restrained this resonance force field within the scope of the giant pit. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 512. Whether this force field really exists, wouldn't you know if you try it? The Hound said. He had already raised the gun, pointed the muzzle diagonally at the dome above the crater, and pulled the trigger. A faint blue arc flashed on the magnetic track coil, and the warhead made of special material was instantly accelerated to 3,500 meters per second, turning into a bolt of lightning and shooting out. Snapped. The sound of the warhead hammering into the rock wall of the dome echoed throughout the power room, and some fine stone dust scattered from high places. The trajectory of this shot passed diagonally through the resonant force field above the giant crater, but it was not affected in any way. It's weird, why didn't you react at all? The Hound muttered, slightly adjusting the angle of the muzzle, preparing to fire again. However, Layton reached out and pressed the muzzle of his gun, saying, electromagnetic weapons shoot out physical bullets. The killing effect depends entirely on the kinetic energy attached to the warhead. The resonant force field will not react to it. Then are you ready for energy weapons? Hound took out the laser pulse pistol, adjusted the firing power to the maximum, pointed it straight ahead, and emptied an entire energy magazine in one go. There is a big difference between pulse laser weapons and cluster laser weapons. The latter directly shoots a straight high-energy laser beam, while the former is more like a stroboscopic flashlight. Between each bullet the interval is 0.0125 seconds, and hundreds or thousands of rounds can be fired in one breath. If the muzzle protector is removed, the shooter's titanium alloy dog eyes can be blinded in an instant. But in fact, the power of this thing is very weak and the range is short. It is better against unarmored targets, but it is completely incapable of attacking enemies wearing armor. After all the calculations, only the temporary blinding effect can be of some use. In actual combat, pulse laser weapons are more used to disrupt the enemy's field of vision, or to ignite some combustible objects. It is for this reason that this type of weapon has lighters and flashlights in the army. A slightly derogatory nickname. But just after this weak laser pulse penetrated into the resonant force field, it suddenly exploded, emitting an extremely dazzling bright light. This blazing white light made Kaylan feel like he was looking directly at the sun above the clouds. Although the filter layer of the protective mask seeped up immediately, tears were still secreted from the tear glands uncontrollably. He closed his eyes, but he could still see the afterimages left by those dazzling spots on his retinas. Damn it, my eyes, the hound's howl came from the side. He kept his eyes wide open and stared at the laser that shot into the position, and he also took off his helmet. At the moment when the light spot exploded, his eyes were blinded directly. He threw away the gun in his hand and covered his eyes with his hands, tears constantly flowing down his fingers. If it weren't for Layton's quick eyesight and quick hands to hold his shoulders, he might have lost his balance and fallen to the ground. The intensity of light released after the laser pulse enters the resonant force field has reached hundreds of times the brightness of shock bombs, which is enough to cause irreversible damage to human eyes. Kaylan blinked hard several times before his vision became clearer. He quickly said to Yvonne, "Quick, go check on the old dog." Yvonne quickly walked to the hound and motioned to Layton to put him down and let him lie flat on the ground. "Doctor? Is it a doctor? I seem to be unable to see." "Am I blind?" the hound asked anxiously after hearing Ivan's voice. "It's not clear yet. We'll have to look at it later." Yvonne took out a small dose of sedative and inserted it into the injection hole of the power armor. Then he grabbed the hound's wrist and removed his hands covering his eyes. "Don't worry, even if you are blind, the technology of artificial eyes is very mature now, and you can see more clearly after wearing them. If you don't like the artificial eyes, you can go to the medical cabin for 2 months and you can recover as before." "Holy shit, am I really blind?" Hound's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't worried about whether his eyes would be able to see again in the future, but if he lost his sight at this time, he would become a different person to the entire reconnaissance team. Become a burden. He knew that Kaylan and others would not abandon him, but he was even more unwilling to drag down others because of himself. "I don't want to be the one holding back," the hound said secretly in his heart. "Don't worry, I haven't even looked at it yet." Yvonne put on a pair of disposable medical gloves and carefully opened the hound's eyelids. "Pass me the flashlight." Yvonne took the flashlight from Layton, adjusted the brightness, and then pointed it at the hound's eyes. Fortunately, the pupils are still responding. It is most likely that the retina is burned. Yvonne breathed a sigh of relief. "Retinal burns? Am I blind or not?" the hound asked. "Do you feel pain and itching under your eyes now, and you want to rub them with your hands?" Yvonne asked again. "Right. Don't touch your eyes with your hands. Squeezing will only worsen the situation," Yvonne said, while gently rinsing the hound's eyes with water. "I'll help you wash away the secretions in your eyes first, and then just put some eye drops on it. Is this all right?" "No need for surgery." Hound was stunned for a moment and asked. "Surgery? What kind of surgery? Will you dig out your eyeballs and install prosthetic eyes?" Yvonne asked. "It's not necessary. Besides, there are no conditions for surgery here." "Then I'm not blind?" the hound asked with some joy. "Being blind is just temporary blindness. The fastest is 10 minutes, the slowest is about an hour, and the vision can be restored. But if you want to completely eliminate the sequelae, I suggest that you spend 2 days in the medical cabin after you go back to heal the patient. Repair the damaged retina. Otherwise, the vision may get worse and worse in the future," Yvonne ordered. In order to prevent the hound from reaching out to rub his eyes, he forcibly put the helmet on the hound's head and pulled down the mask. "It's good that it's not blind. It's good that it's not blind." The hound groped its way up from the ground and cursed, "What a humming force field, it almost killed me." In terms of brightness, The energy of the laser pulse that old dog just fired has been increased by at least 160 times. Layton looked at the screen of the detection instrument and said, with this level of increase, it is no wonder that the motor will be burned. However, this resonant force field seems to only increase energy above a certain intensity. My laser rangefinder was not affected before. Layton added. What if it's a person who goes in? Aya couldn't help but ask. The power armor will be paralyzed instantly, but because of the safety device, the explosion will not happen. As for the impact on the human body, I can't say for sure. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 513. There is no need to rush to explore this huge pit, Kaylan said. At least there is no need to raise its priority so high. Although we know that the core of the power room is in this pit, we can definitely check it first somewhere else. He paused and continued, just like the core reactor of the Ark, we all know that the core of the reactor is the most important place, but the device that controls the reactor will never be installed inside the core. Are you looking for the control panel of this power room? I responded first. Yes, Kaylan nodded, there is a high probability that the console is here. What's the basis? Do you still remember the cause of the earthquake in the molten mine area? Kaylan asked. It's because the launched Agunakotaur fell into the magma pool again, but this is just one-sided words from Park Sang-woo, and his identity has been confirmed to be a spy of the heretical section. What he said can still be believed. Aya frowned. Even if 90 out of 100 sentences he said are false, then among the remaining 10 truths, this sentence must be included. Kaylan said, earthquakes of this scale are not caused by heretical sections if they had the ability to create it, otherwise they would have captured the molten mine area long ago. Moreover, this statement is not just one-sided by Park Sang-woo. The reason why we believed him in the first place was because his confession and the clues we collected were all correct. Before finding Park Sang-woo's rescue capsule, they first found a destroyed armored patrol car and a truck transporting nitro alloy. The driving records of the trucks showed that they initially returned to the base to verify the authenticity of the emergency evacuation notice. It wasn't until they discovered something on the way back that they changed their minds. The only thing that can be observed by human eyes at this distance and immediately abandon all chances of taking any chances, after thinking about it, the only thing is the giant ancient battleship suspended in the sky. Keep talking. Aya looked at Kaylan seriously and urged. True and false, lies and truth are confused with each other, which makes it easier for people to believe. In order to cover up his most critical lie, he must weave more lies as a cover-up, but in this way, it is very difficult for a confession to stand up, especially when we have already collected some clues. It is easy for us to find loopholes. Therefore, he must say anything that does not affect the core lie. Tell the truth to earn our trust. Kaylan continued, so I think Yagunactor caused the earthquake. The credibility of this sentence is more than 90%, as for the further inference, some time ago, this ancient battleship was started, it's 100%. During this period, only 6 of them have entered the interior of the battleship. Aya continued what Kaylan said. Bingo. The bodies of the 3 experts and escorts are in the tunnel, the body of the vehicle driver is in the power room, and the scrapped vehicle is also here. At least it can be proved that Park Sang-woo has been to this place. Kaylan nodded and said, if he didn't go to any other cabin, then he should have activated the Yagunactor inside. That makes sense. Then let's divide into several groups and go find the control device separately. Layton clapped his hands. It is not recommended to split up the troops. This place is too big. If something unexpected happens, it will be difficult for each other to provide timely support. Don't forget, this place is likely to be home to a mutant lavacanthus group. Kaylan said, the supply shortage problem has been temporarily solved, and the extra time can be used to explore this place. I also agree to act together, Yvonne said. The old dog can't see things for the time being and needs someone to take care of it. As for the special indigenous creature like the lava beetle, except for Asano Akira, we don't have any good methods to deal with it. If we encounter a swarm of insects again after dividing our troops, casualties are likely to occur. Okay, which direction should we go first? Layton asked. Directly in front of everyone is a huge pit filled with crystal pillars. Going straight ahead is a dead end, so naturally the only choices left for them are left and right. Let me decide. Kaylan looked around and found that everyone's eyes were on him, obviously waiting for him to make this decision. You are the commander of the reconnaissance team, Ayabrita said calmly. Okay, let me sense which side is more likely to have a console, Kaylan said with a playful smile, sitting cross-legged on the ground and assuming a sedimentary posture. What are you doing? An agent asked, unable to hold on any longer. SHH, I told you it was sensing, don't make a sound, Hound scolded in a low voice. His eyesight has recovered a bit now, and he can vaguely see the outlines of each person. When he saw Kaylan sitting down and when the joints of the power armor were locked, the Hound had already guessed K-Ian's intention. Although he didn't know why Kaylan activated the time stop ability at this time, since Kaylan did this, it meant that he must have found some clues. And these clues can probably only be seen in the stagnant time and space. What sense? The agent curled his lips. Commander, could it be that he is still a legendary superpower? Hey, do you think I'm complimenting you when I say you are short-sighted? Do you know that there is a sensory ability called inspiration? Those hunters with high inspiration are often the core of a team. Many times, you think it's a dead end, but a person with high inspiration can find a way to survive for you. That's everyone's savior, Hound refuted. Of course, there was the second part of this sentence that he did not say. People with high inspiration are also the bane of a team. With such people, the team will often suffer many unreasonable disasters, and even encounter many unbelievable and unexpected things. Things that human beings can neither understand nor contend with, leading to the destruction of the group. The biggest feature of Kaylan is that when he is around, the difficulty of any ruins will rise by at least 2 levels. The inspiration they are talking about is probably something like the sixth sense. Okay, don't argue with them. Another agent grabbed his companion and whispered in his ear, people like them are actually quite similar to the gold-touching captains of the old era. People in this business are very superstitious. As for Aya, she glanced at Kaylan and turned away, snorting coldly from her nose, mysterious. P.S. Thanks to book friend 20200702004408233 and the sharp Tang Ming Huang for the 100 starting coins. P.P.S. This chapter is an update to make up for the debt owed to the Alliance leader and Silver Alliance. There should be another update later. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 514. The Hound's guess was completely correct. Kaylan immediately stopped after sitting down. Moreover, it is precisely to observe those clues that will only appear in the time-stop state. All the people and objects around him turned into black and white. Only the traces on the ground were emitting a soft gray light. K-Ian's eyes slowly swept over these traces, and a large number of information fragments poured into him again. Mind. Record of the 120th Energy Storage Crystal Imitation Experiment. It is far more difficult to improve the level of crystal energy storage than we imagined. We not only need to improve the strength of the crystal itself, but also take into account the stability of energy output and input. We tried adding several rare metals, but the results were not satisfactory. Record of the 139th Energy Storage Crystal Imitation Experiment. After spending a lot of time and resources, we managed to create a level 3 energy storage crystal, but the cost was too high. At this cost, it was simply impossible to promote it. Why are there all these things? Kaylan thought anxiously while reading these records. I want to find the earlier information, such as the situation when the Alpha civilization just discovered this ancient battleship. and what they did after entering the power room. Why are there no records of these things at all? Studying and imitating the crystal pillars in the giant pit must be something that should only be done after the Alphas have explored the entire battleship, at least most of the area. Compared with energy crystals and nano-alloy, the construction technology of this ancient warship is the most valuable thing. Anyone with a clear mind can clearly distinguish this order of priority. Alpha civilization may have been unable to analyze the entire battleship, so it settled for the next best thing and focused on energy crystals and nano-alloy, two important materials that could change the entire civilization. Kaylan originally thought that the reason why the Alpha people abandoned the battleship was because they could not activate the battleship, but now even the 6 Earthlings who accidentally broke into the battleship have activated the battleship, which has a higher level of technology. And could it be that the Alpha civilization, which has owned this battleship for countless years, cannot do this? Even if it's just luck, it should have worked out after so many years. Kaylan raised his head and looked into the distance. Traces of gray light extended to the left and right sides, but what can be seen is that there are obviously more traces on the right side and the light is brighter. Time stop was lifted. Kaylan stood up from the ground and said, "Go to the right." He turned back and exchanged glances with everyone in the hunting group. They had a tacit understanding now, and basically just looked at each other, and without saying anything, they could already understand what the other person wanted to express. The meaning of Ian's eyes is also very simple. I found some clues on the right side, there should be something there. As for the special agent team, they didn't have any objections. Kaylan was originally the commander of the reconnaissance team, and they just had to obey the orders. Although several agents complained about Ian's weird behavior just now, Kaylan actually didn't waste much time, so they couldn't say anything more. After all, Kaylan is still the nominal superior of these people. If he makes him unhappy and finds a reason to use his authority to put their shoes on, that would be like being a mute and eating coptis. The pain will be unspeakable. Just kidding, inspiration is actually not that accurate. Kaylan laughed. It mainly depends on some clues. Look at the wear marks on the ground. Are there more on the right side than on the left? It seems, a little bit more, right? But it's not very obvious. If you don't say it, I can't feel it at all anyway, Layton said hesitantly. Compared with the task prompts that emit eye-catching gray light in the time-stop state, these traces are actually very inconspicuous in the real field of vision. You may not be able to find them with a cursory glance, let alone comparing the numbers on both sides. It is true that there are more marks on the right side, Aya nodded. She had just taken the photo and then used a computer to analyze and compare it. The result was that there were more marks on the right side than on the left. 12.9%, and the average depth is 15% higher. This analysis software is a good thing. Can you give me a full copy later? Kaylan poked her head out and glanced at the tablet in her hand, praising. This is an internal tool of the Security Bureau and is not open to the public. Aya put away the tablet and said seriously. Then let's borrow it. Kaylan shamelessly stretched out his hand and said with a smile, we are just grasshoppers on the same rope now. At this time, such useful gadgets should be shared, right? Kaylan did not use his identity as a commander to order the other party, because he knew that Aya was being arrogant when she rejected him, so he took advantage of the situation and gave the other party a step down. This leader of the special agent team is actually a very good person, but sometimes he is too serious and likes to get into trouble too much. That is why the relationship between the two groups has become so bad along the way. If possible, Kaylan actually wants to get along with him. They get along well with each other. After all, they are literally grasshoppers on a rope now. Huh. Aya stared at his face for a few seconds, then handed the tablet to him, the second folder on the fourth disk. The program name is XX Field Trace Analysis Program Ver 4.0, the software unlock code is 11605207, and the password for copying the license certificate is IUB1073. Remember to delete it after the task is completed. Okay, Thank you. Kaylan took the tablet with a smile and threw it to Layton. Copy the software and send a copy to everyone's Power Armor Central Control System. Okay. After taking the tablet, Layton pulled out a data cable and connected it. Not long after, the traces on the ground were marked by the AR device inside the helmet in an enhanced display, and the floating screen on the side was its dense calculation data. In this way, Kaylan can clearly see these task prompts even if he does not enter the time stop state. Let's go. Kaylan put the gun on his shoulder, waved his hand and ordered. In order to ensure nothing goes wrong, the team chose the most stable assault formation. Valkyrie was at the front, followed by Layton and Zwilligita, who were equipped with heavy firepower, and Ivan and Kaylan were in the team. In the middle, he was taking care of the Hound, whose eyesight had not fully recovered, while Asano Akira was at the back of the team. P.S. Thanks for the 500 starting coins. For the 500 starting coins that the Long Johns don't pill and the white floating monster never recharges. P.P.S. There are 8,000 words of explosive updates today, and there should be another 8,000-10,000 words of explosive updates tomorrow. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 516. Following the traces on the ground, the reconnaissance team moved forward steadily along the wall on the right side of the power room. The further he walked, the deeper the marks on the ground became, which were formed by heavy equipment rolling over for a long time. Kaylan could even imagine what this power room looked like when it was once filled with various scientific research equipment. I'm wondering if the Alpha people lost the battle and deliberately sank this battleship in this place in order to prevent it from being captured by the enemy, Layton muttered. As a result, the Alpha civilization was later the clan was exterminated, so this super battleship was forgotten here. Impossible, Hound vetoed. This is a battleship, not a tinder ship used to preserve the Foundation. It's a life and death situation. Do you still have a trump card and plan to use it in the next life? Besides, this ancient warship was not originally built by the Alpha civilization. I am afraid they themselves have not thoroughly studied the technology inside it. What is the use of hiding it? Maybe the enemy who destroyed them built this a third civilization with a battleship. That would be interesting. To take a step back, even if they want to hide this battleship in order to make a comeback. Kaylan took over the words and said, then do you think that a civilization that can destroy the Alpha people will not be able to find this sunken ship, the battleship in the magma? Even us Earthlings have found it. Isn't that civilization's exploration ability worse than that of Earthlings? Unless it's the kind of civilization where the technology tree is crooked. Ivan said half-jokingly, everyone is like Superman in superhero movies, crushing opponents purely by physical strength, and can blow them up with one punch. If a battleship swallows a planet alive and tears out a wormhole with your hands, it is possible that you are just not interested in the development of science and technology. As he spoke, Dr. Mao Zi shrugged and made a funny expression. I have only seen this kind of setting in ancient fantasy novels. How can one breath be enough to break the galaxy, and lift up the road with one hand and one foot, turned into a fan? I quite liked this kind of novel when I was a kid, but now that I think about it, it's really embarrassing and funny. Hey, maybe that great god worshipped by the Alpha people really has this kind of ability. Before Layton could finish his words, the Valkyrie one who was opening the way at the front suddenly stopped, and he almost bumped into the Mech's butt. What's wrong? Did you find anything? Layton immediately drew out his weapon and carefully leaned out half of his body from the side of the machine. Others in the team also had similar reactions. There are strange symbols on the ground. Valentina's voice sounded in the team channel. She controlled the mecha and moved out of the way. Symbol, Layton took the lead and stepped forward. He just glanced at the ground, then stood up immediately, turned his head and looked at Kaylan. It's Alpha text. As a relic hunter who has been dealing with this kind of things all year round, although Layton cannot understand the content of Alpha text, he can still distinguish the characteristics of this type of text. As for Valentina, who has just entered the industry, she is not yet ready. It can only be seen that this is some kind of symbol with special meaning. Kaylan, come here quickly and take a look, Lighton greeted immediately. This is the first time they have discovered text messages left by Alpha civilization inside Yagunactor, and there happens to be a special talent like Kaylan in the team who can read Alpha text. How do you say that idiom? Layton muttered, yes. That's the one, God help me. Kaylan walked up quickly. He just glanced at the words that looked like ghostly drawings, and his whole breath was suffocated. Fortunately, this time he reacted in time and did not let Aya, who was following behind, notice him. To the problem. If these strings of alpha characters are to be translated into Chinese, they can be simplified into 3 characters. Control Taiwan. A strange feeling suddenly arose in Ian's heart, that you can't find anything even if you break through iron shoes, and it takes no effort to get it. This console was found by him just like that. He turned back and glanced at the other team members. Aya and the several agents under him all had blank expressions on their faces, while Hound and the others had a hint of inquiry hidden in their slightly expectant eyes. The meaning, they also wanted to know immediately what these alpha words meant, but due to the presence of outsiders, they couldn't speak directly. Except for a few people in the Hunting God hunting group, the Security Bureau agents did not know that Kaylan had the ability to read alpha text, and Kaylan was not willing to kill all these people. If he did, then and what's the difference between those people from the heretical sect? I have seen this string of characters before. Kaylan thought about it and changed his statement. Have you seen it? Aya was stunned and quickly asked, where is it? In the core control area of a B-class ruins, on the central control hub, there is a string of characters. The style and order of the individual characters, if I remember correctly, they should be exactly the same. Kaylan began to show off his acting skills. You mean, the mechanism that controls this power room is located right here? Aya widened her already big eyes, but, there is nothing here? Moreover, the Alpha civilization, even if the words look exactly the same, their meanings will be very different. Now there's trouble. Hearing the second half of Aya's words, Kaylan licked the roof of his mouth with his tongue in annoyance, thinking about how he could get rid of this matter. He originally thought that a public servant like Aya, who was busy performing various tasks all day long, would not know much about alpha writing, but who knew that she actually knew a lot about these things. 99% of the things on the Ark, people all know that alpha text cannot be deciphered, but no one can tell the specific reason. The text of Alpha civilization is just like an encrypted document. The ghost symbols that humans can see are actually just the password to open the file, and the content contained in the file has nothing to do with the password. Not related. These passwords are as if they were shaken out with a random number generator. There are no rules or rules at all. For example, the same string of 123,456 passwords may be entered this time, and the opened file will read, "Hey, good afternoon, have you eaten?" The next time you enter the same password, it will open another document, and it will become eat it raw, I'm sorry. This thing doesn't make sense to you at all, so using human logical thinking, it is almost impossible to decipher the language of Alpha civilization. The ability Kaylan obtained is actually more like a universal key, which can directly see the essence hidden inside the characters through the appearance. This should not be said to be a kind of text, but should be regarded as a higher-level information carrier. Kaylan wanted to say that this might be a coincidence, but the probability of this coincidence was so low that even he found it difficult to believe it. Although I don't think the control room of the power room is here, I think we should explore the surroundings carefully. After all, this is the only text clue we have found so far. Who knows that Kaylan hasn't thought of his words yet? Aya instead they took the initiative to cooperate. Thinking about it, even if the clues finally discovered have nothing to do with the console, normal people should be more cautious. Kaylan secretly thought. It seems that this time, he made a low-level mistake. Fortunately, this error is not fatal. The mistake he made was somewhat similar to Park Sang-woo's previous lie. They both fell into preconceived misunderstandings. Kailan knew the true meaning of these characters, and in order to let others know it, he had to make up a reason that seemed untenable now, but in fact, he didn't have to do this at all. He just needs to play dumb and give a little hint. During the subsequent exploration, others will naturally discover the meaning of these characters. Damn, I will never make such a low-level mistake again in the future, Kailan secretly warned herself in her heart. Fortunately, Aya didn't think too much about it, and fortunately she is not an enemy of the opposite camp. At this time, Aya was already kneeling on the ground. She bent her upper body, her two long legs were slightly apart, and her hands were carefully groping on the ground around the characters. The trace analysis program just reported an error. There seems to be something wrong with this floor. Hearing what Aya said, Kailan also focused on the heads-up display. He saw that the calculation data of the analysis software kept jumping back and forth, and a few error characters would pop up from time to time. Note: error, error. What does this mean? Under what circumstances does the software usually report an error? Kailan asked. When encountering optical camouflage, Aya replied. Suddenly, her body trembled and her hands stopped moving. I found it, she turned around and said to Kailan. What did you find? Even when Kailandang focused on her hand, he saw that the index finger and middle finger of her left hand sank directly into the ground, and the surrounding space was slightly distorted. It looked like it's a model crossing bug in 3D games, and it's like a negative teaching material for novices in pictures. Here, there is a groove, covered by optical camouflage. In terms of size, it is 5 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide, just enough to put an energy crystal in. It's an energy supply slot, Layton reacted immediately. Put a crystal in and give it a try, Kailan said. Aya thought for a while, took out a piece of the lowest grade first-class crystal, pointed it at the invisible groove, and pressed it down carefully. Anyway, it is just a first-level crystal. Even if it is another transmission mechanism, the energy inside the crystal is not enough to activate the transmission device. The moment the energy crystal was pressed into the groove, the ground directly in front of the character suddenly cracked open, and a dark gray stone pillar slowly rose up from the ground. At the top of the stone pillar, there is a metal sphere the size of a football suspended. There was a subtle change in the expression on Ian's face. This was not the first time he had seen this thing. Among the memory fragments that emerged in the abnormal space, Kailan only remembered 3 pictures. The first picture was of the weird square, the second picture was of Park Sang-woo embedding ultra-pure crystals into the grooves on the tunnel wall, and the third picture was of the strange square. The third picture shows a pair of hands pressing on a ball that emits soft white fluorescence. Although the suspended metal ball in front of him did not emit light, Kailan was certain that it was definitely the same thing as the ball he saw in the memory fragments. As for whether the hands pressing on the sphere were human, he had some doubts. In the first picture, those half-human, half-octopus creatures whose lower bodies were made up of a large mass of tentacles, their bodies above the waist were almost indistinguishable from humans. There is no difference, the hands are naturally the same. Therefore, Kailan was not sure whether those hands belonged to humans or those monsters. Is this thing really the console of the power room? Layton murmured. He wanted to reach out and touch the metal ball, but the moment he was about to touch it, he turned his head and glanced at Kailan, then retracted his hand. Layton admitted that at that moment, he was scared. After all, only Kailan knew what those characters meant. Even if this thing was really a console, it was Kailan who should handle it. Decide. The most annoying thing in Layton's life is that laymen who don't know the equipment don't pretend to understand his work, point fingers, and even interfere in self-righteousness, but in this situation, he has become something like that. A layman who doesn't even understand. Kailan, do you know what this thing is? He carefully poked Kailan and asked softly. It should, be the console we are looking for. Kaylan deliberately pretended to be uncertain, but secretly, when Aya wasn't paying attention, he gave everyone in the hunting group a look of affirmation. Console, isn't this too coincidental? Aya looked at the stone pillars and metal balls in disbelief, and then at the characters on the ground. It's not that, the characters of the Alpha civilization are completely different from each other. Doesn't it have any reference value? Maybe it's really a coincidence. Kaylan curled his lips and said, you should have heard of the infinite monkey theory, right? Let countless monkeys hit countless typewriters at will. One day, these monkeys will type Shakespeare. All his works are just a string of characters that have been used repeatedly. I think the probability is much higher than that of a typing monkey. Aya flattened her mouth, not commenting on Ian's theory. She stood up and walked around the stone pillar. While looking at the details of the stone pillar, she used the device in her hand to take a full range of images of the stone pillar, and then uploaded it to the tablet. The height of the stone pillar, including the suspended metal ball, is about 1.30 meters, which can just reach the chest of an adult. This makes people subconsciously want to put their hands on the metal ball. This thing is a bit like the suspended directional ball that was popular for a while when we first landed on Alpha Planet. However, that thing was easily disturbed, and its stability was not very good. It was eliminated not long after. Until now, everyone still thinks that the mechanical transmission steering wheel is more reliable. Layton said at the side. Note, a directional ball is a device used to control a vehicle instead of a steering wheel. Nita is inspired by Liu's The Wandering Earth in the movie. The protagonist and others use this thing to drive. P.S. Thanks to Altse for the reward of 306 starting coins. Thank you to the book friend Zunzwava for the reward of 200 starting coins. Thank you to Faying 5182, Nija, and book friend 202031103144121986 for the reward of 100 starting coins. P.S. We are the champions. I stayed up late to watch the game until 1 o'clock yesterday. Even though the last game was a dominant game, I didn't dare to breathe at all. I watched the end cautiously. I held my phone tightly until the base exploded, crying and laughing under the quilt. About 10 minutes later, someone outside the community started shouting Anyub. He ran around the community while shouting. His voice became closer and farther away, and then closer and closer. In the end, his voice was hoarse, although I really wanted to shout with him, but I was afraid of disturbing the people and waking up my parents, so I could only lie by the window and whisper quietly, EDG, awesome. The gold content of this championship is too high. The top 4 teams and 3 LCK, a total of 6 S championships, and what does EDG have? The best result was just the top 8, before the semifinals started. The so-called 3 heroes versus Lubuletin was just a joke. But they did it. Fight all the way through the levels. Breakthrough into the quarter-finals. Top 4. Finals. Champion. Grass Mud Horse. It's on fire. I think of when I was in college. At that time, every year was the most promising year for LPL, but the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. I lost again and again, and that kind of fear of Korea. The atmosphere is something new players who started paying attention to LOL after S8 have never experienced. OMG, EDG, range. Every time, our team has become the backdrop for the championship. So much so that this year, almost everyone no longer has hope for the championship. The expectations for the championship trophy, this year can be said to be the lowest in so many years. No one thought they could defeat the devil like DK. Even a few die-hard EDG fans I knew said that it would be great to reach the finals. As for the championship, just think about it. You can dream, but you can't be awesome. Blow. I saw a sentence on social software, there is nothing to lose, no one expects us to win. However, the dream came true. The theme of this S competition seems to be tailor-made for them, no break. No. Stand. Until now, more than 10 hours have passed since the end of the game. I still feel a little bit stunned, as if last night was just a dream. I watch the news over and over again, browse various social media, and tell myself over and over again that a miracle really happened. I am a novelist, but to be honest, I don't even dare to write novels like this. Novels also need to pay attention to logic, but reality does not require it. No need for a miracle. Congratulations to EDG for winning the S11 championship. Yesterday I said that I would update 10,000 per day. The past 2 days have already been full of updates. The high load of coding caused an attack of tenosynovitis. After today's update, I should resume the daily update of 4,000 and take a break for a while. But you can rest assured that the update will be added. For those of you who don't know how to do pigeons, I will try my best to complete 10,000 words within this month. There is one more thing I want to tell my fellow readers. Although it is worth being happy to win the championship, please also pay attention to the scale when celebrating the victory, do not do excessive behavior, and try to avoid things that will have a negative impact on society. I think that everyone who loves esports will not want these things to become a reason for criticism by those who regard esports as a thorn in their side. Finally, EDG, NB. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 517. How do you use this thing? The Hound's vision finally recovered to some extent. He squeezed forward, patted Ian's arm and winked. How do I feel about the use of this thing? The method is the same as the direction ball. Shouldn't the ball be pushed upwards and the battleship will fly up in a swoosh? The rudder should be on the bridge. This is the power room. Before Layton could finish his words, the Hound jumped up and smashed a chestnut on his helmet, making a crisp sound. Idiot, your head is full of engine oil and fat, right? Did those aliens tell you by name that this place is the power room? Who told you that the design of alien battleships must be based on the designs of Earthlings? Any idea? Maybe the cab and power room are integrated into one. What the old dog said makes sense. Otherwise, Yagonactor wouldn't have rushed out of the magma pool before Ivan nodded and agreed. It's just that this console should be specially designed, for it was designed for the race that built this battleship. Even if the Alphas have modified it, it has been modified according to their operating habits. Can humans control this thing? While they were talking, Kaylan had also completed a 360-degree inspection of the console. To his disappointment, the surfaces of the stone pillars and metal balls were very smooth, without any characters or marks. The top material of the stone pillar is exactly the same as the side material. There is no way to detect the internal structure of the stone pillar without damaging the stone pillar. I've already tried it. Just when Kaylan was about to speak, Aya had already learned to answer quickly. No matter whether it was a metal detector or an X-ray, nothing inside the stone pillar could be seen. The layer of material wrapped around it, this is no ordinary rock. Well, the hardness is very high. Kaylan straightened up and raised what he was holding in his hand. I just scratched the surface a few times with a tungsten steel probe. It didn't leave any traces. On the contrary, the needle showed a little. Where, if this material can be developed, I'm afraid it will be as valuable as energy crystals and nano-alloy. Then it seems that this console should be an original product of the third civilization. The Alpha people can't even make nano-alloy, let alone this kind of stone that is harder than tungsten steel. Hound said, as mentioned above. Have you checked the floating metal ball? It seems to me that it is made of nano-alloy, but it seems to have some impurities in it. The Hound squinted its eyes and stretched its neck straight, almost pressing its head directly against it. The main material of the metal ball is indeed nano-alloy, but it's hard to say what metal elements are mixed into it. Layton shook his head. After destroying the console, the information that could be detected was really it's too little. It's useless for us to guess here. Why don't we just put our hands on it and try it? If you don't dare, let me be the guinea pig, Hound said, already rolling up his sleeves. Old dog Kaylan stretched out a hand and stopped the Hound in front of him, looking at him thoughtfully. I'll do it. Are you coming? The moment he looked at Kaylan, the Hound was stunned for half a second, and then immediately took half a step back. Okay, if you want to come, just do it. Be careful. Kaylan took a deep breath and walked less than half a meter away from the console. Based on the intelligence that has been collected so far, one thing is certain: the main reason why Park Sang-woo wanted to deceive them was to lead himself into a Gunakotaer. He did this with a very obvious purpose. For the heretic sect, in their reconnaissance team, only they, as the successor, have irreplaceable value. Park Sang-woo's goal is himself, not others. If this ancient battleship is a lock, then among all humans, the only ones qualified to be the key are Kaylan and the Prophet. But the Prophet was very timid and did not dare to let his real body go deep into dangerous areas, so he only sent a substitute like Park Sang-woo who could be sacrificed at any time. When Park Sang-woo entered Yagunakter for the first time, he apparently tried to activate this ancient battleship, but he failed. The battleship rose into the air, then fell down, and sank into the magma again, the depths of the pool. Kaylan didn't know the reason for his failure, but it must have something to do with his substitute status. The successor's substitute and the successor himself, no matter how similar they are, there will still be some differences. Perhaps the control system of this ancient battleship discovered this gap and judged Park Sang-woo as a fake, so that's why the startup failed. Then the Prophet will decide to let himself, the genuine, try to see if he can activate the battleship, but what makes Kaylan a little confused is that the Prophet is not worried. After activating the battleship, he will attack in turn. Someone from a heretical sect? With the power of this battleship, it might be possible to destroy Alpha Planet, let alone a group of exiles who relied on the remnants of the Alpha people to arm themselves, and even the basic food and clothing problems had not been completely solved. Why does he dare? Kaylan thought this way and slowly placed his hands on the metal ball. And nothing happened. Hound, Aya, and others stared at each other for a moment, their doubts palpable. If this control method is wrong, what is the correct method? Although Park Sang-woo failed, he had managed to make the battleship fly, but now, there was no response from the console. Wait a minute, I know what the problem is. Kaylan smiled awkwardly at everyone, then took off his gauntlets and gloves, and pressed his hands on them again. In an instant, a circle of dazzling white light lit up on the surface of the metal ball, completely different from the soft fluorescence that Kaylan saw in the memory fragments. There's a reaction, the Hound just exclaimed, and loud noises came from the direction of the giant pit. Everyone quickly turned their heads and saw that all the giant crystal pillars had sunk to the bottom of the pit, replaced by dark green light pillars connected to the dome. The green light pillar continued to expand until the entire giant pit was filled. However, there seemed to be an invisible wall on the edge of the giant pit, restricting the light pillar and preventing it from crossing the limit. Resonant force field. This is the resonant force field I'm talking about, Layton shouted excitedly. P.S. The update is complete. The 10,000 word update for EDG's championship will be divided into 5 chapters of 2,000 words. For additional updates it will be completed before the end of the month at the latest, please rest assured. PPS Thanks to book friend 33021503035472 for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you Baitang Yiren Ruyu for the reward of 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 518. The green light pillar rising from the bottom of the giant pit gradually became solid, as if it was not an illusory light and shadow, but a green solid emerald. Is this, activated? Layton murmured. He suddenly felt that the scene of those giant crystal pillars slowly sinking to the bottom of the pit was very similar to the scene when nuclear fuel rods were inserted into the reactor. Probably the Hound raised his head and looked at the light beams that reached the dome. Damn, my eyes are still not very good. What I can see is a big green patch, and the edges between the light beams are completely blurred. Already. It's not a problem with your eyes, Yvonne said. This is what we saw, those light pillars merged together. Layton glanced down, and then immediately shouted, "Everyone, please put on your helmets and protective equipment. The radiation intensity in this space is rising rapidly." After what he said, everyone whose attention was completely attracted by the green beam of light realized the problem. Part of their skin exposed to the air felt waves of needle-like stinging, and the stinging was still there. Continuously enhance. The Geiger counter also started chirping crazily. The Hounds and others hurriedly put on their helmets and gloves, and then fastened the sealing rings. Only then did they have time to glance at the screen of the Geiger counter, which made a series of clicking sounds. In just a few seconds, the radiation intensity in the power chamber has risen from the safe value to more than 40 times the dangerous indicator. It only takes a few tens of seconds to stay in this environment, and the radiation is enough to cause irreversible damage to human genes. If you stay for 5 minutes, even if you can get treatment in time, there will be permanent sequelae. If you stay for 1 hour, you can just think about the funeral. Moreover, the body must be disposed of in a special incinerator, and the ashes must be placed in heavy lead boxes. "This thing is really humming deadly," Hound complained, while injecting himself an anti-radianin and an anti-radianin through the injection hole on the power armor. The Cangradian and Zyauridin they carried were both of the highest quality. As soon as the medicine entered the blood, a feeling of nausea came over. This was one of the most obvious side effects of Cangradian. As for Zyauridin, it was equivalent to a super diuretic. The irradiated urine was quickly excreted from the body. Everyone removed the urine storage tank hanging from the waist and disconnected it from the connecting pipe of the water circulation system. In order to ensure that there is no shortage of drinking water, all the sweat and urine excreted by the human body will be collected and sent to the circulation purification device for a series of processing processes such as filtration and distillation. However, the urine excreted from the body through siphonning is absolutely what cannot be recycled, must be discarded. The radiation intensity in the environment finally stabilized after rising to 485 times the danger indicator. At this time, the Geiger counters on everyone's bodies no longer made any sound. There are only 2 reasons why the Geiger counter is silent. One is that the radiation is too low, and the other is that the radiation is so high that it has exceeded the detection threshold. The working principle of the Geiger counter is to rely on the high-speed particles released by radiation to cause an ionization reaction in the gas sealed in the counter, discharge and output a pulse current signal. However, when the radiation is too strong, the entire circuit will simply short-circuit directly. At this time, the non-professional Geiger counter screen display will return to 0, and some high-end counters equipped with additional alarm chips will display the words "The radiation in the environment has exceeded the measurement limit and is extremely dangerous." Fortunately, I didn't take off all the equipment on my body, otherwise it would have been too late. The Hound just breathed a sigh of relief, and his whole body tensed up again. No. That guy Kaylan. He hasn't been there yet. Everyone quickly turned to look at the console on one side and saw that Kaylan, who had put his hands on the metal ball, had not moved since the beginning. The dazzling white light emitted from the metal ball climbed up along his hands. At this moment, his entire surface was covered with a thin layer of halo. His hands are exposed. He will get radiation sickness, Layton shouted to him. Kaylan. Can you hear our voices? Let go. Put on protective gear. However, Kaylan completely turned a deaf ear to the shouts of his companions. He was staring at the metal ball in front of him with all his attention, and his facial muscles were constantly twitching slightly. He could naturally hear Layton calling him, but he couldn't respond at all. The moment his hands came into contact with the metal ball, the ancient battleship seemed to be connected to him. To be precise, he became part of the battleship, and became one of the parts that make up the battleship. A huge flow of information poured into his mind like a flood, and the strong impact caused Ian's consciousness to jump repeatedly on the edge of collapse. This situation was very similar to what happened after he touched the stone tablet, but that was just it took just a moment, but now, his hands seemed to be stuck to the metal ball, and he couldn't let go. Layton and Hound were obviously standing not far away from him, but their shouts sounded like they were far away in the horizon. No, it's not that his hand is stuck to the metal ball, but that his body has lost control. Kaylan wants to use his brain to send the raise command to his arm, but this command has not yet been sent along the nerves. When I went out, I was overwhelmed by the huge amount of information pouring in from the outside world. Under this situation, it became extremely difficult for Kaylan to even think. He felt like his consciousness was like an apple thrown into a wall-breaking machine. It was being crushed by the sharp blade amid high-speed rotation and violent collision. Torn to pieces. Moreover, an indescribable feeling of fatigue was coming. Kaylan realized that this console was frantically consuming his mental power. Although the consumption rate was slightly slower than that of time stop, at most if it drags on for another minute or two, his mental energy will be completely exhausted. What's worse is that he has no way to stop this consumption. He can't even activate time stop. This couldn't be a trap set by the heretical section. Right. The situation is not right, Kaylan. He seems to be trapped at this time. Even Layton realized the problem. Should we pull him away? But I'm worried. We don't have time to think so much. If we don't pull him away, he might lose his life. Hound walked up to Kaylan. The expression on his face looked very painful. Hey. Kaylan. Can you listen? Do you hear my voice? We're going to use violence to pull you away from this damn thing. If you agree, just blink. If you don't want us to do it, just blink twice. Can you hear me clearly? The Hound shouted loudly at Kaylan, while signaling Layton to get ready. Ian's face began to twist, the veins on his forehead bulged, his chin trembled involuntarily, and saliva overflowed from the corners of his mouth. If it weren't for the halo covering his body, the Hound would have almost thought he was having an epileptic seizure. At this time, Ian's eyes suddenly moved, and the focus of his vision moved from the metal ball to the Hound with difficulty, and then he blinked. Pull, the Hound yelled. Layton took a big step forward and reached out to grab Ian's arm, but just when he came into contact with Ian's body, he suddenly let out a scream and his whole body suddenly jumped back. He fell heavily to the ground. What's going on? Big guy. Are you okay? I'm fine. Old dog, please don't touch Kaylan. He seems to have high voltage electricity on his body. I just felt like I was being shocked. Layton got up from the ground with some difficulty and looked at himself, and the palm of the robotic arm that Kaylan had come into contact with was scorched black, and there were even slight signs of melting in the palm and finger joints. Electric shock? How is that possible? Doesn't the power armor have an insulating layer? The Hound said in astonishment. It's not an ordinary electric shock. Look at my hand. Layton opened the palm of the robotic arm and showed it to everyone. His current state, how to say, it's like a piece of energy storing or releasing energy. The energy intensity of the high-level energy crystals in the energy state, and the halo on his body, is initially estimated to be no less than the maximum output power of the 9th level crystals. What are you talking about? The Hound looked at Layton's damaged palm, and then at Kaylan standing in the halo. You mean he is now a humanoid energy crystal? But how can the human body withstand that? Such an intensity of energy? The maximum output power of a 9th level crystal, I'm afraid he has been wiped out long ago, right? I don't know, but... Before Layton could finish his words, Aya interrupted him. Let me do it. Don't be impulsive. I'm a reformer. If I were an ordinary person, I might not be able to endure what I just did, Layton quickly advised. I'm not as weak as you think. Aya glanced at him, put a shield generator on her wrist, then opened the energy shield and walked towards Kaylan. Don't open the shield to fight head-on, otherwise you will. However, Layton's words were still a step too late. When the energy shield in Aya's hand collided with the halo on Kaylan's body, the shield generator exploded with a bang, and she was also struck by it. This huge impact pushed him backwards, and even flew farther than Layton. As for Kaylan, he still stood there with a completely different look. I told you not to open the shield. Energy bodies of different origins will most likely explode when they collide with each other. Are you too reckless? Layton sighed. Are you alive? How are you injured? Hound, who had always been at odds with the Security Bureau agents, asked for the first time. It seems like 2 ribs are broken. The tibia is also broken. Aya's rapid breathing came from the team communication channel, accompanied by several moans that were suppressed in the throat. It seemed that the injury was serious. Doctor, go check on her. The Hound looked at Yvonne. Yes, Yvonne nodded and walked towards Aya, who was dozens of meters away. Lie on the ground and don't move, in case the broken bones hurt the internal organs. In this situation, there is no way to take off the power armor. Come down, I can only help you with it briefly, which may have some impact on your ability to move. I know. Aya gritted her teeth, took out a painkiller needle from her pocket, and inserted it. On the other side, Jolajitu, Layton, and Hound were so anxious that they stamped their feet around Kaylan. They wanted to save Kaylan, but they couldn't think of an effective way for a while. Can you push him away? Hound said suddenly. I mean, use weapons. Layton, do you have something that can't penetrate powered armor, but is very powerful? Try it and see if you can push him away. Kaylan pushed away from this thing. I know this may hurt him, but it is better than losing his life. It's useless. Layton shook his head. The impact of the shield generator explosion just now was enough to push even Valkyrie, but do you think Kaylan has moved even a little bit? What should we do? How about we smash this console? This layer of light curtain is only found on the metal ball and Kaylan's body, but not on this stone pillar. Maybe it can be done, Hound said again. At this time he already felt a little sick and was in a hurry to seek medical treatment. The hardness of this stone pillar is comparable to nino alloy. If it is solid, if you want to smash such a thick piece of nino alloy, with our equipment, we can't do it. Then what else can we do? Damn, I'm so anxious, Hound said, kicking the stone pillar violently. Although he was not bounced away like Layton and Aya, the stone pillar was also intact. Move. But the next second after he finished kicking, the glowing metal ball suddenly went out, and Kaylan's body fell limply to the ground. Before Layton could reach out his hand, Akira Asano had already appeared behind Kaylan and caught his body. What the hell? Is this okay? The Hound glanced at the extinguished metal ball and then at the instep of his own feet. Damn, I'm so awesome. This probably has nothing to do with you. Layton wanted to complain about the Hound, but now it was obviously more important to check on Kaylan's condition. Kinyi, how is Kaylan? Is he not dead? Not dead. Asano Akira shook his head and helped Kaylan stand up, but his mental power is very weak, so weak that I can't even feel his consciousness. Mental power? Are you talking about the kind of power that needs to be consumed to activate those special abilities of you and Marshall? I remember. Hound glanced at Aya and several other agents in the distance, and switched the communication channel to one-on-one mode. I remember Kaylan said that he also needs to consume this mental power to activate his abilities. Well, his body is fine, but his mental strength is exhausted, Asano Akira replied. Before he finished speaking, Kaylan's eyes suddenly opened. A flash of white fluorescence flashed in his eyes. He grabbed Asano Akira's wrist and said anxiously, "Quick! Get ready to fight." I just saw, the things at the bottom of the pit. They were just trapped before, so they didn't climb up, but now, the thing that trapped them has disappeared. P.S. Thanks to Lost Zhuang, Book Friends 201707131324179880, and Xianyu for the reward of 500 starting coins, thanks to Haisheng for the 200 starting coins, thanks to Shenji and Gazang 1 for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 519. What? What are you talking about at the bottom of the pit? What's trapped? The hound asked confused. Lava beetles. Adult lava beetles are very big. Just now, my consciousness was connected to this battleship. I saw several extremely huge lava beetles dormant at the bottom of the pit. They couldn't move before, because they were too big, and were stuck by the crystal pillars. Kaylan said incoherently, breathing heavily as he spoke. Lava can't harass? Stuck by crystal pillars, Layton was stunned. Oops. Those crystal pillars have sunk now, and there is nothing to imprison them anymore. Are you kidding? Can there be any living things in this pit now? The hound glanced at the green light beam that merged into one in the distance. With this level of energy fluctuation, even if there are really any living things down there, it should be it's already been wiped out, right? This is really not necessarily true. Layton shook his head and murmured, the lavacanthaphias originally feed on this kind of material, and they are very adaptable to high-intensity energy. In addition, what appears here is mutated species. It's hard to say. Kaylan, what happened to you just now? What's going on with this metal ball and that halo? Hound stopped arguing with Layton and turned to look at Kaylan. This console is actually a connection device. Kaylan resisted the overwhelming sleepiness and tensed his back. The moment I touched it, I seemed to have become one with this battleship. As he spoke, he injected himself with 2 more high-intensity stimulants, forcing himself to stay awake. Through the perspective of this battleship, I can overlook the entire giant pit from the dome. At the bottom of the pit, I saw at least 100-meter level mutated lavacant harass. 100-meter level, the hound's eyelids couldn't help but twitch violently. They could still handle the lava larvae that were less than 1 meter long, but the giant lava candid that was 100 meters long, that is beyond the firepower of the reconnaissance team. Even if Asano Akira is possessed by the Sword Master and can split a 100-meter level mutated lavacant harass in half with one strike, the power it generates when it self-destructs is enough to wipe out the entire team. At least in this powerhouse, they had nowhere to hide. Coupled with the magnitude of more than 10, the hound only felt waves of powerlessness rushing into his heart. Fighting. Even if they could defeat these huge insects, they would definitely die. Damn, even if I lift the table, I can't clear the place. Layton, who just got into a card battle game some time ago, couldn't help complaining. It's already very difficult to deal with minions with death rattle effects, and the other party has spread it all over the field. These big bugs can be considered legendary follower cards, right? To kill such a legendary death rattle monster, you will basically end up killing 800 enemies and losing 1000 to yourself, not to mention, they may not be able to kill it. Kaylan, do you have a way to make those crystal pillars rise again? As long as you can block those big guys again, won't they be unable to climb up? The hound looked at Kaylan with a hint of hope in his eyes. After my mental energy was exhausted, the connection with the battleship was directly disconnected. It was difficult to recover for a while, Kaylan said through gritted teeth. He is still awake and has not passed out. He is completely, it's the medicine that's keeping him strong. If he connects to the console again at this time, I'm afraid the impact of the information flow alone will make his brain explode. Explosion in the physical sense. Wait. I know how to deal with those bugs. At this moment, Layton suddenly shouted. What did you think of? Hound was stunned. Speak quickly, don't waste your humming time. Resonant force field. This resonant force field. Its restraint device can even trap the energy generated by so many crystal pillars after they amplify each other, and it can be stably trapped in this pit. The self-destruction of the 100-meter level lava canthalyps can also. It is impossible to break through this constraint. As long as we can kill these bugs in the pit, their self-destruction will not affect people outside the pit, Layton said quickly. Kill in the pit? How to kill? As soon as the hound said this, Layton, who was in ecstasy, was stunned for a moment. Yes, it sounds simple, but in practice, this plan is simply impossible to complete. Layton finally understood the meaning of the old saying, ideals are full, but reality is skinny. The most powerful weapon carried by the reconnaissance team is the disposable plasma cannon mounted on the Valkyrie, but the plasma cannon is a type of energy weapon. The self-destruction of the lava cannon will be suppressed by the restraint device of the resonant force field, and the plasma cannon is ejected. The plasma will naturally be dissolved by the resonant force field, and cannot cause harm to the lava cantharides in the resonant force field. Even if the plasma cannon could pass through the resonant force field and kill the lava canopy, they would only have one chance to fire. However, Kaylan saw more than 10 lava canopies that were 100 meters high at the bottom of the pit. Anti-bumping note: plasma weapons are not purely energy weapons. To be precise, the only energy weapons in the true sense are laser weapons. Plasma weapons generally rely on the impact of high-speed particles and the bombardment of ultra-high-temperature ion clusters. They are hybrid weapons with a double strike of kinetic energy and thermal energy. However, the killing effect mainly relies on the high-energy plasma cluster constrained by the magnetic field, also known as the electromagnetic field. Pulp, so they are generally classified as energy weapons. I think the top priority is to quickly find an exit from this power room. Kaylan can't hold on any longer. That girl's injuries are not light. It's even impossible for Akira Asano to deal with the 100-meter level lava beetle. It is better to die than to live, and there is no shame in escaping. Hound said. By the way, Kaylan, since you said that your consciousness was just connected to this battleship, did you see the passage out of here? Yes. Passage. Layton was stunned for a moment, patted his helmet hard, and said as if waking up from a dream, I forgot about this. Kaylan, have you found any passage? Even if you go back to the original, it's fine in that tunnel. The 100-meter level lava candid is so big that it definitely won't be able to get in. However, Kaylan just shook his head. If I had just found a way out, I wouldn't have called you to prepare to fight. You mean, this is a dead end? Are we trapped here? The hound's face suddenly turned pale. No. I mean, there was so much information that just poured into my brain that I couldn't process it in time. As long as I try to recall, my head hurts like it's about to burst. Feel sorry. In other words, the exit may still exist, but you haven't found it. Hound's eyes lit up and he asked. Kaylan was silent for half a second and nodded. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 520. Then there's still hope. Maybe we can find this exit. While the big guy under the pit hasn't moved yet, let's hurry up. Before Hound finished speaking, Ying-Ying, the green fluorescence on the ground suddenly disappeared. He turned around and found that the emerald green light pillars that originally rose from the bottom of the pit had completely disappeared, but those crystal pillars that had sunk did not rise again. Why did the light beam disappear? Is it possible that something from the bottom of the pit is about to climb up? Layton held his heavy machine gun nervously, placed it on the ground, and pointed the muzzle at the edge of the giant pit. Old dog, Kinyi, if something really climbs up later, I will help you hold it down, and you quickly take Kaylan to find the exit. Why are you trying to be a hero? The hound kicked Layton's butt angrily. Hold it. Do you think you can hold back 100-meter level lava cantha with just your pile of scrap metal? It can delay you for at least 1 second. You guys go away quickly. What are you doing here? Layton yelled, his face turned red, and the mechanical arm holding the handle clicked due to excessive pressure. Sound. That's not right. Unexpectedly, the hound's expression suddenly changed. It doesn't seem right, the situation seems different from what we imagined. What's wrong? Those crystal pillars have disappeared for so long, and now the green light has been extinguished, but why is there no movement? The hound squatted on the ground, squinting at the huge pit not far away. Those little bugs were so fast before, just climbed up. Even if the big guy moves a little slowly, it has been several minutes. Something's wrong. The hound simply lay down. The noise the big guy makes when it moves should be much louder than those little bugs. He lay down, put the side of his helmet on the ground, and listened carefully. Did you hear anything? Layton asked. Quiet. Hound didn't even raise his head. He just raised a hand and gave Layton the middle finger. Stop making any noise. Turn off your damn cannon engine. It keeps spinning like a bone. I can't hear any sound. Layton quickly turned off the cannon engine that was in a preheating state. The sound of friction between the metal balls and bearings disappeared, and the power room suddenly became extremely quiet. Old dog, did you hear anything? After holding his breath for nearly 10 seconds, Layton couldn't help but ask the hound. I can't hear anything. Damn, I almost forgot. There are people in the team who are more professional than me. Why am I wasting my time here? The hound jumped up from the ground and looked towards him with bright eyes. Asano Akira said, Brother Asano, you have the sharpest ears among us. You were also the first to hear the sound of those little bugs crawling up just now. By the way, can you hear the movement at the bottom of the pit now? Layton, Yvonne, and the agents who helped Aya come over also focused their attention on this young man who had his eyes closed the whole time and his expression was calm throughout. There are some sounds that are very subtle and difficult to capture. Akira Asano said softly. The other's breath suddenly became suffocated, and the atmosphere that had just relaxed became tense again. No one dared to interrupt, everyone was waiting for Asano Akira to continue. But it doesn't sound like the scraping of joints and rocks, Asano Akira added. What kind of sound is that? I don't know how to describe it, Asano Akira said honestly. Hound suddenly had the urge to curse, but the curse words reached his throat and he swallowed them hard. Then can you imitate it? Roughly, simply imitate it, or think about it carefully. Among the familiar sounds in daily life, are there any similar sounds that can be used to compare with the sound you heard? You can imagine what would make the sound you heard, no matter how outrageous it is. Aya also induced, for example, the sound of thin iron sheets being torn, or the sound of nails scraping a blackboard. Category. It's a bit like. Asano Akira paused and continued, the sound of several huge and heavy polyhedral glass balls grinding slightly on the rocky ground. Hound and Aya looked at each other in confusion. They could indeed imagine this kind of sound, but they couldn't imagine why such a strange sound was coming from the bottom of the pit. Akira Asano's description was not abstract, but the sound was so special that they racked their brains and couldn't imagine anything else that could make a similar sound besides glass balls rolling over rocks. Let alone the picture, I can't even think of a specific concept. Damn it, if you can't think of it, just forget it. I'll just go over and take a look at it. I don't believe it can blind me a second time, the hound said angrily, and walked towards the edge of the giant pit. Go. But Layton held him back. Old dog, how about I go? Your eyes have not recovered yet, and my reaction speed is faster than yours. If there is any danger. The hound broke free from Layton's hand. You are a broken cyborg, and most of your body is a cybernetic body. If we encounter that damn resonant force field, the equipment will be scrapped at most. Damn it, the artificial heart will stop when the time comes. Who will save you? Leighton opened his mouth slightly, but couldn't hold back a reason to refute. Hound was right. Of all the people present, the one with the most restrained resonance force field was him who had installed a large number of cybernetic weapons. If the vital life support organs of a mechanical biochemical human being exploded like the movement of that drone, the consequences would be absolutely fatal. Then, be careful, old thing, Leighton said, watching the Hound bend over and touch the edge of the giant pit step by step. However, the Hound just stuck his head out and took a look, then burst out laughing. Ha 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 dash. Old dog. What's going on? What did you see? Leighton asked hurriedly. Ha 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 ha, I'm laughing so hard. I finally know why those big guys can't climb up. Ha 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 ha, you'll know when you come over and take a look. Ha ha ha. When the Hound said this, Leighton also walked to the edge of the pit full of curiosity and cautiously took a look into the pit. P.S. One day, with a knife in hand, I can kill all the broken dogs in the world. P.P.S. Thanks to Rxtfio for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to Stelra for the 600 starting coins, thanks to Baitanya Yaren Ruu, Book Friends 2021020414531578 Book Friends 1608070800427776, and Book Friends 20210301104120143006 for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 521. At the bottom of the giant pit, there were a total of 13 100-meter level mutated Lavacantharis dormant, more precisely, 13 mutated Lavacanthaphid whose bodies had already become crystallized. Unlike larvae that have tiny crystals on their body surface and internal organs, the outer carapace of these 100-meter-sized giants has almost completely crystallized. Through these crystals, the organs in their bodies can still be vaguely seen. No wonder Asano Akira said he heard the sound of glass balls rolling on the ground. Leighton muttered to himself while sharing the scene he saw with everyone in the reconnaissance team. Of course, crystallization is not the main reason why these lava beetles lose their ability to move, because they have been stuck at the bottom of the pit for a long time by crystal pillars. The bodies of these lava beetles have been completely deformed, and lines have been squeezed out on both sides of their huge abdomens. The flat groove is like Tom, who was caught in the door in the classic cartoon Tom and Jerry. As for the arthropods of these crystallized lava beetles, they have degenerated due to years of inactivity. Those pairs of arthropods that are only a few meters long are grown on a body of 100 meters, and cannot even reach the ground, paddling in vain in mid-air. The look can't help but make people feel a little funny. Leighton could almost imagine the growth process of these crystallized lava beetles. When they entered this large pit, their bodies had not grown to the point where they would be stuck by the crystal pillars, but there was abundant energy and massive amounts of high-grade crystals in the pit. Is like throwing a mouse into a filled rice vat. They devour everything they see crazily and greedily, until the rice in the rice vat is completely eaten, but at this time, the mouse eye can no longer reach the edge of the rice vat. Of course, the current situation is not that the rice in the rice vat has been eaten up, but that the mouse is getting fatter and burrowing deeper and deeper into the rice pile. In the end, it has been firmly pressed into the pit by the heavy rice pile. Bottom, can't climb up anymore. But then again, if there really is such an empty rice vat, most mice would be willing to stay in it for the rest of their lives. These bugs look like bananafish. At some point, Ivan also walked to the edge of the pit and sighed softly. It looks like, what kind of fish? Hound glanced at Ivan and asked. Bananafish, banana fish. Banana fish? What is that? A fish that looks like a banana? Is it a species that existed on the Earth before? No, this is an illusion, from the novel A Good Day for Bananafish by American writer Salinger. From the old era. Ian's feeble voice came from the team communication channel. The original text is they swam to a hole. When they swam in, they were just ordinary looking fish, but once they entered the hole, they couldn't stop eating until they were as fat as pigs and could no longer eat. Coming out of the hole, the fictional image of the banana fish symbolizes the endless desires in the human heart. Kaylan paused, took a few breaths with some difficulty, and then continued, not just humans, any living creature will have desires. Giving up freedom, humanity, and even more important things for desire, for some reason, Kaylan suddenly thought of the prophet of the heretical sect. What is his desire? Survive. Survival and reproduction are the two most basic desires of all living things. Whether it is hunting, eating, migration, a series of actions that seek advantages and avoid disadvantages ultimately serve these two basic desires, even if they are trapped in the crystallized lava at the bottom of the pit swallows a large amount of energy crystals just to survive longer and reproduce more descendants. Only humans, in K.Ian's impression, only humans would give up their lives for some superficial desires. Of course, using the word desire to describe it may not be accurate. It can be a desire, a belief, an idea, or something more difficult to describe. There are so many things that human beings cannot ask for: power, wealth, knowledge. Many people are even willing to sacrifice their lives to exchange for them. In contrast, the desires of the prophet are purer. He wants to become stronger and survive in this universe. In order to achieve this goal, he can give up everything else. What a beast! Kaylan thought silently in his heart. His eyelids gradually became heavy, and even powerful stimulants could not suppress the sleepiness, especially after learning that those 100-meter level lava beetles could not pose a threat to the team. Kaylan had been tightening his penis. The string suddenly became loose, and he lost consciousness before he even had time to say a few words to the hound and the others. When Kaylan regained consciousness, he subconsciously reached out and grabbed a slender arm. Although this arm was slender, he could still feel it through the anti-loading fabric that adhered to the body lines. Powerful muscle fibers underneath the clothes. "Are you awake?" a young woman's voice came from the direction above her head. Kaylan opened his eyes and found that he was lying on a flat chair. The power armor on his body had been removed, leaving only a pair of close-fitting clothes. The arm and wrist of his left hand were tied to the armrest of the chair with elastic bands, and there was a large piece of tape on the back of his hand that was used to fix the indwelling needle. The beeping sound of the infusion machine kept coming to my ears, and the pungent smell unique to the powerful sterilin filled the dark and small space. Valentina, Kaylan looked at the place where the sound came from. He realized that he should be lying in the cockpit of Valkyrie now. What's going on? What happened after I passed out? Akira Asano said you are just mentally exhausted, and there is nothing wrong with you other than that, Valentina said. Kaylan raised his head and could see her thin chin line, reflected in the light blue of the monitor. Under the reflection, a metal-like texture appeared, but Uncle Nick said that you suffered a large dose of radiation, and you must hang up 6 bags of Radianixin before you can move. The radiation intensity outside is still very high now, so I just put you here. Nick is the hound's real name. Although he hates being called this name, Valentina stubbornly follows Chi Hanfan and calls him Nick. As time goes by, the hound can only go with the two of them. 6 bags of Radiantin, according to my weight, it's already the maximum dose, right? Does this old dog want to poison him to death? Kaylan complained. Only then did he realize that there is actually a heavy urine bag attached to the lower body. 30 minutes have passed since the last rehydration. Valentina glanced at the timer on the screen. Do you want to drink water, or use intravenous drip? Can you help me turn off the infusion machine? Kaylan showed a wry smile. His special physique is actually not very afraid of radiation, although his body will still absorb radiation from the outside world. As long as he is isolated from the radioactive source for a period of time, the radiation in his body will automatically dissipate, and there is no need to use radiation elimination. Excreted from the body, the hound guy was obviously frightened by the dose of radiation in his body when he was just unconscious, So Ivan asked Ivan to prescribe a full 6 bags of radionixin. He could clearly feel that the bulging bladder was filled with liquid, and the strong urge to urinate hit his nerves. Fortunately, it was only a plug-in urine bag, not an inserted urinary catheter. Kaylan was emptying the liquid in his body. After that, he turned over and pulled out the indwelling needle on the back of his hand. "How is the situation outside?" Kaylan took the water bag from Valentina and asked. 13 lava beetles whose bodies were greatly crystallized were found at the bottom of the pit. However, the motor organs of these lava beetles have degraded and lost the ability to move independently. They are not a threat to us. So Team Leader Bria and Uncle Nick, I decided to rest where I am and wait for you to wake up before formulating the next plan of action, Valentina replied. Yes, Kaylan nodded. He squinted his eyes slightly and tried to recall the memory of the time he just connected with Agunakotaer. However, what made him a little regretful was that the information that poured into his mind, there were only blurry shadows left, even the top view of the giant pit was no longer clear. His memory seemed to be covered with a thin layer of gray fog. This layer of fog was very thin, so thin that he could see some rough outlines and smudged patches of color through the fog. But when he wanted to stretch out his hand to open the layer of fog, the fog suddenly became staring and dull. It became thicker. Those distant and unreal memories are not like his personal experiences, but more like he is looking at what happened to others from a third-person perspective. Could it be that this information is temporarily sealed like that stone tablet, and it can only be activated if certain unlocking conditions are met? Kaylan thought in his mind, I just don't know where this information comes from. The handiwork of Alpha civilization is still a legacy of the civilization that built this ancient battleship. Those memory fragments from the steel are unlocked by seeing the things associated with them, so will this information be the same? Kaylan plans to give it a try. He sat up straight and stuck his head in front of the console. However, what Kaylan didn't expect was that due to the very small space in the cockpit, Valentina was already pressed against the bulkhead. He gave as much space as possible to Kaylan. When Kaylan moved like this, his shoulders directly touched Valentina's back. The young female pilot let out a muffled groan, and her unbalanced body fell to one side. Fortunately, her reaction speed was much faster than ordinary people. When she was about to crush Kaylan, her right hand managed to catch it. A pull ring on the top of the cockpit suspended his body above the seat in an inclined position. And Ian's face was buried in Valentina's armpit. When surfing the internet in the past, Kaylan once heard some nervous veterans say that among human women, Caucasians can definitely be regarded as the type that can only be viewed from a distance, not played with. Many white girls, from a distance, appear to have fair skin and hot figures, but when it comes to close firefights, they realize that although white skin looks white, it is very rough and has many pores. They are big and have a lot of body hair, except for those girls who have undergone medical cosmetic surgery or received genetic modification. The remaining pure and natural white girls are enough to be beaten by the equally pure and natural yellow people in terms of skin alone. Completely exploded. But skin quality comes second. According to a veteran driver, their body odor is the most terrifying thing. He said that he has been in love with 17 white girls, and 16 of them have terrible body odor, so they must use strong-smelling products. Use perfume to cover. The proportion is as high as nearly 95%. Of course, there are also some perverts with special hobbies who are born with this smell. They even gave the smell an elegant name, tuberose. However, Kaylan did not smell those unbearable strange smells. He only smelled a faint smell of sweat, mixed with the unique body fragrance of young women, seeping through the thin fabric of the anti-static suit. Got into his nasal cavity. Kaylan was stunned for a moment, then immediately lay back on the seat. Sorry, I didn't notice where you were standing, Kaylan said awkwardly. Well, Valentina responded. Her tone and expression didn't seem to have changed much, but if Asano Akira was here instead of Kaylan, Valentina's heartbeat could be heard. The speed is nearly twice as fast as before. Can you stand up? Kaylan tried to ask. The legs seem to be clamped, Valentina said. She straightened her upper body with some difficulty, but she could not move at all below the waist. Valkyrie's cockpit is originally a standard single-person cockpit, and a lot of armor and electronic equipment were added during the transformation, which made the internal space that was not very spacious become even tighter. And now, the cockpit is filled with supplies dropped from the cargo hold. Valentina's legs were pressed by a bag of supplies that rolled down, and the instep of her feet was caught in the seat. At the lower edge. If it were any ordinary girl, she would have cried out in pain by now. Only Valentina, who has been tortured by old injuries and sequelae for many years, could hold back the pain. But despite this, her face also became a little pale. How can I help you? Looking at the girl whose body was tense and whose back was almost bent into an arch, Kaylan was at a loss for a moment. Help, my waist, can't hold it anymore. Valentina gritted her teeth and said, the bag pressing my calf, I can't reach it with my hands, help me move it, it should be able to move. Oh, Kaylan responded quickly. He held the girl's flexible waist with one hand, and reached down from her side with the other hand, groping to grab the bag that was holding down her legs. And this action forced Kayan's head to press against Valentina's side. Through the fabric of the anti-static suit, he could even distinguish the outline of the sports bra worn inside. P.S. If you drive a small car, I hope you won't be cheated. P.P.S. Thanks to Sant Shikaku for the 520 starting coins, thanks to Meng Zixuan, Cod Nikoch, and Xiao Chenxing for the 100 starting coins.